So before you cook anything, you need to make a base for the food. And normally a base for the food is going to be the stock. Stocks are quite good because you can actually make gravy out of them. You can use the stock for soup and various other bits and pieces if you want to use them. Right? Now this is a carrot, obviously. Carrots come with dirt on them. They come with fronds. Here we go, some fronds there. But they don't just come in a plastic pack from the supermarket. One of my little bugbears that is. Everything's wrapped in plastic. It's actually quite sad. You don't need it. Happens to paper bags. Now what we're going to do with the carrots, I've washed these. All we're going to do is just take the tops off. They can go for compost. We don't want the fronds. And all we're going to do in a big stock pot over here, there are 2 sticks of celery in here. This is where I did the exercise for the knife chopping. And what we're going to do in a pot, we're just going to chop the carrots into sizable pieces and just skin on, throw the carrots into the bowl. Next we need an onion. I'm going to use 2 onions. All I'm going to do, chop them in half. Chop them in half. And I'm just going to take the skin off of these. You don't need to. Into the pot when you're ready. Now, if you see the onion here, where the root is, this is the root here. Don't cut through that, otherwise the onion will fall apart. Leave it whole and you'll be able to fish it out easier from the pot. Chop some celery up, stick that in the pot. When you have your roast dinner, keep the bones. What you're doing here is actually getting a new meal out of this. So the bones are important because the gelatinous areas around the muscles and the sinews will actually break down any excess meat that's left over here, will actually boil off and flavour the stock that you're creating. Okay, so just put them in a little plastic bag, stick them in the freezer and freeze them till you need them. I've got 3 here, so what I'm doing is putting them in a pot here. Stick them in the pot. Now what we want to do is actually add some more flavour to these. You've got the vegetables in here already. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add parsley, stalks and all. This is parsley, flat leaf parsley. Don't bother peeling all the bits and pieces off, just to pick the leaves. Shuffle that in there. Now this is lamb, so lamb likes the herb rosemary. So I'm going to put 2 sprigs of rosemary in there. Rosemary can be overpowering, but in this case hopefully they're small enough to make the stock tasty, as opposed to soapy and horrible. I've got 2 bay leaves here, throw them in the pot. Got some sea salt, big pinch of that, 2 pinches. Salt is a flavour enhancer and pepper is the spice. So if you have bland stock, salt sometimes will actually save it and make it tastier just by adding a few spoonfuls of, well, teaspoonful of salt. Here we've got about 10-12 black peppercorns, throw that in. And then we just top up with water. That's the stock. Now that's a simple stock. You can do this with ham hock bones. You can do this with chicken bones. And obviously I've got mine here with lamb bones. So I'm making a lamb stock to make some, what am I going to make with them? I'll make some sort of shepherd's pie or lamb stew with this. So all we need to do now is just top this up with some cold water. So we've added some water to the pot. We've got our peppercorn in there, we've got some salt in there. All we need now to do is actually put this on a simmer for a couple of hours till the bones sort of break down the meat and the sinews. And the bone marrow in here will actually make the stock thick and tasty. And all that needs to come out by the boiling. So once it's on the hob, just bring it to a boil and then turn it down to a very low simmer. I'll bring mine forward from the back hob, which is the big one, to a smaller one on the front, and just turn that very low and simmer it for a couple of hours. And then because it's lamb, lamb's fairly fatty, as is chicken, especially if you leave the skin on it, various meat bits and pieces in the bone. What I like to do after this is actually leave it to cool, and the fat will congeal on the top, which you can actually spoon off, and then you can scoop out the bones or put it through a colander with a big pot underneath it, which actually keeps the stock, or pass it through a sieve. That will actually enable you to scoop off the stock that you want and leave the bits and pieces behind, like the bones and the stalks and the peppercorns. This is our lamb stock that we made yesterday. I've left it overnight in the fridge to cool down and to solidify the lamb fat on the top of the stock, which is this yellow bouncy stuff. So all I'm going to do is run a little spoon under here, take that off, put that in a little bowl for disposal. And what I do when I've done this, I pour this into a plastic bottle, like a milk carton, because I don't really want this stuff down my plug hole. If I was to wash it down the sink, it would just bugger the drains up. And we don't really want to do that to our house. Leaving some is okay. You don't really want all this on your heart, do you? It's just going to add to your medical problems later on. So the best thing to do is to scrape all this off. Have some lean stock when you start your next recipe. If you take this slow, you don't break the fat up. It makes it so much easier to scoop out. And underneath, the stock isn't dribbling through this spoon of mine, which means it's formed gelatinous quality to it, which is what we want. So we set the sieve up into a big saucepan underneath, and all I'm going to do is pour my stock slowly through the sieve, which will filter out the remaining little bits of fat, any peppercorns we have, and any lumps of green vegetable herb type consistency that is left in the pot. So let's give that a bit of a shake. And we're going to dispose of that. All the goodness is in the stock. We don't need any of the vegetables left over. I'll give that a bit of a shake. And return that to there. Now if you notice in the pot we've got left, we still have jellied lamb stock. All that is extra flavour. We also have various bits of peppercorn, onion and a bay leaf left over. So just scrape that, making sure you get most of the bits out, and then pour that into your sieve. That's that done. And all we need to do now is lift our bowl, lift our sieve out, and just run whatever's left, a spoon against that and the sieve. That will pass the jelly, which is the flavour, into your bowl that you've collected your stock in, leaving the residue, the onion, bay leaf, any peppercorns that's left over. Now we have our stock. All we need now to do is to put it into containers